I recently sold my Samsung S21 Plus, and part of the reason I got rid of it is because ultimately for me, I was no longer using Samsung DEX. And Samsung DEX was a huge reason that I wanted to get a Samsung device in the first place. Now, I want to talk about some of the pitfalls and some of the particular pain points that I had with Samsung DEX and just why it wasn't the right fit for me. Now, first is just the lack of desktop optimized apps. Let me give you an example. I like to use Brave browser. It's a great way for me to earn some crypto. If you guys use Brave browser, you can tip me because I'm a creator, but I like it because of the privacy features of it. But every time I would go to a website, I would have to go ahead into the options to enable desktop mode because it wouldn't save desktop mode as a default, and there's no way that it could automatically use desktop mode when I was in Samsung DEX. I had to use the built-in Samsung browser. Now, that's kind of annoying having to go back and forth between two browsers. Another example of this is in something like Office or using any of like the Google Office apps. There's no built-in palm rejection into the trackpad. There's nothing with the UPerfect X Pro. This isn't particularly Samsung DeX specific, but in general, the lack of palm rejection means that you're constantly enabling and disabling the trackpad when you're using it. This was never that big of a pain point for me. It's just one example of how a lot of applications and just a lot of things in general were not optimized for Samsung DeX. The third one was application scaling. Now, there's a lot of applications that we use on our phones that can be replaced with a browser, or things that we would use a browser for that on mobile we use apps. A great example of this is Facebook Page Manager. You can use an app on your mobile phone, or you can use a desktop browser to do so. That said, if you try to use the mobile app in DeX, it's just horribly scaled, inefficient, and just doesn't work that well. Another pain point for me was the lack of any kind of real video editing apps. Now, I understand right now LumaFusion has come to Android, so maybe I could have gotten a little bit more utility from my Samsung device using LumaFusion on DeX. That said, unless you are really committed to like this mobile creative space, you're gonna find that using desktop or just regular applications like Adobe Premiere just run a lot better. As great as Adobe Rush is, it still isn't even close to as full-featured as Adobe Premiere Pro. And for me, someone that creates content kind of seriously, the amount of time it would take me to just import the clips onto my desktop, edit them, would actually be less time than me trying to go through some kind of convoluted workflow in a Samsung DeX app. Now, that said, there are some redeeming apps. Adobe Lightroom on Samsung DeX is fantastic, especially if you use the Adobe Cloud. Being able to edit and like work on specific catalogs in the cloud mobily, I think is awesome. And it's really, really quick and responsive. And I think that for a lot of mobile photographers or people that maybe have a large library that's synced online with Adobe, you would get a lot more utility out of using Samsung DeX. And I think there's some really specific like on-location workflow type of stuff that Samsung DeX would be really applicable for. I just didn't use it that much. The next is a little bit of just I grew out of Samsung DeX and a little bit of just there are better alternatives. So when I started using Samsung DeX specifically, it was because I had started a new job and I needed to have like the ability to do a lot of word processing, and that was basically it. I had to do word processing, research, web browsing, so Samsung DeX was perfect. That said, when I got my Google Pixel 6, I could use voice dictation on my Pixel and it would be faster and oftentimes more accurate than using a keyboard, and it wasn't even close. Especially if I was going to be writing out scripts, the fact that I could talk to my phone and it would go ahead and create scripts for me with natural voice dictation as opposed to typing stuff out just meant that I was writing better scripts faster using voice dictation on my Google Pixel. Now, with all that said, I still think that Samsung DeX is absolutely incredible. And I think that for a lot of people and a lot of workflows, especially a lot of productivity focused stuff, Samsung DeX is really kind of like a one size fits all solution, especially if there isn't any like desktop specific application features that you need to use. I had no issues using Samsung DeX for the 4.5 months or so that I was using it. And it's something that in the future, I think I will come back to if I need those word processing kind of specific stuff. There's also kind of the issue of hardware. If you are going to be using one of the mobile lap dock things, you just have to be willing to put up with the fact that you are not going to have palm rejection and you're going to need to bring a mobile mouse with you. That kind of defeats some of the purpose, especially because Samsung DeX's whole ethos is being able to do more with less. So bringing an extra mouse, because palm rejection is terrible, is a little bit kind of convoluted and backwards, in my opinion. The other thing about it is that from just like a hardware performance standpoint, doing the video out over that will sap some of your performance. Also, the fact that Samsung doesn't have any kind of pass-through battery tech for Samsung DeX meant my device was constantly going up to 85% discharging, 85% discharging. Samsung, you've made this awesome feature that's really, really valuable, yet you don't offer any kind of pass-through power options. Means that you're just roasting your battery. Get it together. And application developers, there's a huge community of Samsung DeX people and Samsung DeX lovers that want your applications to do well and are willing to pay for them. Do better.